Okay, good morning, everybody. Let me firstly open the Blackboard here. Oh, by the way, so I have a grade or first assignment. So far, I didn't see any big problem in the homework. So if you personally have concerns or grading, or you have questions on your codings, you can individually contact me so we can set a meeting either at a school or in the Zoom, so we can solve the problem. All right, so I will not gonna discuss this in the whole class about the first assignment since I didn't see any major problem issue there. Okay, so let's say where we are here. I think let me firstly check the or last class, the lab 2. Do we have any anything we have not explained? And then we're gonna talk about our new lab 3. All right. All right, so let's firstly look at our labs 2 before. Yeah, we have all, remember we have analyzed the data about the, let me look at the data firstly. Yeah, last class we basically manipulate the data a little bit. We're looking to on the personal, the banking balance, salary, default or not. We didn't do any analytic work. We just do some data manipulation. For example, we have a down. If you go back to our code, we have a down, for example, how to relabel, okay, relabel the code from numerical character to the factor level. Those kind of work, preliminary work, is just usually for the later analytics, definitely what we'll learn in the future. All right, and this is also very basic, the functions you probably want to get familiar with yourself on those command here. We also get familiar with the tidyverse. I think this is probably the most important thing. I strongly recommend you to have a time to Google the tidyverse packages and see more example by your own self, kind of a self-learning, because in our class, we only can cover a specific range of the codes here, very specific, and because we want to reduce the time as minimum as possible. All right, but if you have time, you want to probably learn more on that. There's be many more examples around the world. So far, I think the key part of the tidyverse package is that you usually, particularly if you want to manipulate the data on the raw data frame you have read into, you probably need like the pipe sign. You need some filter, select, and check the data. And actually, we will learn more and more. All right, and so the pipe sign here, double percentage pipe, it's like a command chain here, right? So line by line. So you don't need to mention, the data frame name again and again and again if you do want work. And actually in the single chain, right, a series of actions operation, you can realize many data manipulation step in this process. All right, so I think this is benefits. So it looks like the whole operation is like more systematically arranged. All right. So the last class we I think I know we also discussed like a summarize, group by. Maybe I need to mention a little bit here how to explain the group by. All right. But I think I remember we talked about this, right? So let's just stop at September 23rd, and let me check. Yeah, I believe last Friday we have discussed that. All right, let me delete this. All right, so the group by. So the group by is very powerful function here. Group by, right? The reason is that sometimes if you really want to sort the order of the data, and you probably have a multiple dimensions on that. All right, for example, this one, we want to summarize the bank balance, and the bank balance will be, you can just sort the bank balance, rank the bank balance on the single dimension. For example, look the defaulted, right? You want to look into for defaulted people, what their bank balance, for the non-default, what their bank balance. All right. So it is very similar. It is very similar to look into the regression relationship. Let me first give an example here. I'll say the group by, sorry, it's not good color here. In the software here, all right, so if you look at the group by, so let me talk about what's the core essence in the data science. So what is the meaning here? In the group by, we understand, right? You basically define what is a variable name, and based on the variable name, you want to summarize some property. We understand this, right? We have done this, last Friday. So what it essentially means, what the purpose? It's similar to if you want to do linear regression. Say y equals ax plus b. We maybe mention a little bit linear regression in the future, but it's not focusing on machine learning basically. So let me focus on this. I think, but I estimated you probably have learned something in the statistics class, right? But I hope you can recover something here. So let's look at the traditional regression. Regression, you basically a supervised learning. That means there is some specified relationship you assume, and you assume x and y. Follow this rule here, and given the x, you want to get response from y. All right, and the coefficients a and b, you definitely need to solve to get the values, and you understand what their association relationship there. So actually, when you do this, you can think about like if x can be 0 or y. If it is take a binary relationship, it's very similar to group by. All right, you can see here. So if x equals 0, y equals some value. If x equals 1 and y equals some value. All right. So in this case, there are differences. What represents the gap between these two groups. All right, to some extent. I would like to say similar. I didn't say they are exactly the same. There's still some differences. All right. So for example, you can think about x like say bankruptcy or not, all right, default or not. So if it is default 0, non-default 1, and then you can get what is the value here. Actually, it's just very essentially to here, group by. All right. Okay, so this is the what I mentioned here. But there is one thing, okay, probably not relevant to this class, but not this lecture or this module, but I want to mention here. If the x only take some strange value range, for example, like only 0, 1 or only 0, 1, 2, such a discrete integers, you can't use traditional linear regression to estimate the coefficients. You probably don't want to do this, all right, because it's aware. We will introduce some more methods, all right. So the linear regression probably, if you want to look into this supervised relationship, you probably want to apply more for the if x is continuously variable, and that means x can take any values, all right. For if you want to look into, the stock returns and the market risk needs, you want to look into, ice cream consumptions and the temperatures, you probably want to use linear regression because the variables has basically continuous, can take any numbers, all right. But if you want to take the discrete or not, the binary or not, such a kind of things, the directly linear regression sometimes give you some trouble, all right. So anyway, so let me say, so the group by is basically do some things here, all right. And why we need to again summarize the mean value. If you go back to the code, we also mentioned the mean. Okay, why we look at the mean value? All right, so what exactly means here mean if you want to mapping this to the data science, the statistical concepts here? The mean is basically means expectation. All right, so that means I basically take expectation of y, something like that. Expectation. All right, we understand that roughly speaking, usually the expectation will be your average value. I would like to say roughly speaking. Roughly, it's not always the case. All right, so because when you take the mean value, assume it is expectation, that means you assume each observation will take the same opportunity to happen. All right. For example, if you say, what is your expected next Monday stock market value, S&P index, the best estimation, probably the expectation of the future value, probably that goes the historical value, take the average, all right, as to your estimation. So this is, in this case, we assume the expectation equals to tomorrow, the future expectation equals past, average. But we will make assumption. If that means in the past history, every day, the weight ratio is the same, but actually sometimes it is not, right? When the economy goes to expansion, your return is good. When the economy goes to recession, it's bad. So actually their impacts is different, depends on the background. All right, so sometimes we'll be worsen the situation or even exacerbate the situation. So we didn't think about this, right? We assume every day they will be happen equally. So this is the kind of things why we might want to study the mean value here, because to some extent represents expectation. All right. Okay, so there's something I just simply want to mention a little bit. Whenever I have a chance to connect or the example to some even deeper scope, I just want to try to explain myself use the straightforward language here. So in that case, this, because the this field is a very big field. Actually, you can learn probably many years. So I just want to explore your knowledge scope there. Okay, so now let's go to I newly uploaded the module 3. And by the way, I think that previously we have mentioned that all of our lab exercise and examples come from the textbook here, right? The textbook. This book is a very the small book added by some people, and only I think less than 200 pages. So we will have enough time to go through this whole semesters. Okay, so after this, you will have a better understanding on the at least a part of the machine learning techniques here. So actually, for everybody, if you want to go deeper in this field as your future in your job, actually, this book is probably good. Let me see. So this book. All right. So this is the say an introduction to statistical learning. All right. So this is the it's deeper book. All right, it's deeper. I think I have to write this in the syllabus. It's a deeper book, but it's these are high requirement on the mathematics. So if you don't have enough math background, you probably don't need to do that. All right, but this class we only focus on the implementation. All right, so do some project hands-on experience, projects, so small mini project. I think that's usually the other people will be interested in. All right. Okay, for example, if you open this book. If you open this book, right? So this book actually, you can see this is very new. I just found it this summer. In the past semesters, I usually use the more difficult book, and the students can still survive. Past students, I really appreciate that they still can survive with me with the difficult materials at that time. And this semester we kind of like a little bit better. Because only this summer, there's some interesting authors, write some simple book as at the introduction is very good. Okay, so if you look at this book, they have embedded a catalog here, right? They have from lab 1 to lab 7, and this we basically promisely follow this order. And for your own learning, all right. So after looking my video, definitely we will introduce something we are particularly to our background. And for any lab, for example, if you look at the lab 2, all right, they have a better, the introduction and the explanation on the data and the background. I think that will be very useful, particularly if you're missing my, oral presentation or explanation in this part. All right. Okay, so this is the book issue, and let's go directly to the lab 3. All right, lab 3. Okay. Probably next week I'm gonna introduce our assignment 2. All right, we will have we will have a 4 assignment. I want to give it actually even more assignments because the more assignment you will have more hands-on experiences. All right, that's very important thing. Module 3. Let me open the module 3. Okay, so the interesting on the module 3 is that we will still use the same data. All right, we'll still use the same data. That means the bank loan and the financial situation of the each people. And what I'm gonna do here, my lab will focus on learning the data visualizations. All right, which is probably one of the most powerful function in the R Studio here. All right. Now, first, let's go back to again. So you need to install the Tidyverse. All right. Now, let's make suggestions. When for example, like this Friday, we teach that, and you better want to run finishing this week. Don't wait until next. Probably I'd give you assignment 2, because if you give you assignment 2 questions, a lot of students give me last minutes. All right, email me, hey, how to install the packages. I'm failed to do that. I'll let us say it's gonna be too late. This package, Tidyverse, we're gonna heavily use that every day, every class. All right, and it's I think this is probably the one of the most important packages in our studio. Please install that and the library that. See if any problem. We need to solve this before the real assignment due. Way before that. All right, then you can have a more time to focus on the thinking and working the learning the project instead of waste of time on the package or not. All right. Although I would like to say install and uninstall and solve the problem when install the packages is still very useful experience. It is very useful truly. All right, because it's the foundation. Without a package, you can't do anything. All right, but we want this, speed up a little bit. You want to do this as early as possible. Don't wait until the last minutes when you want to do homework. You try to install this packages and you find a problem and you contact me. Probably the time is very limited. All right, that's one thing. So that means you need to run this, what we teach in the class, run the code nowadays, today, and see if any questions, right? So in that case, in the homework, you will do not have a hassle, in the homework time. All right, so we need to run the tidyverse here, right? So you can say that's probably we successfully elaborate that because it's mentioned that all the packages has been installed. All right, so so actually this class we're gonna heavily use the packages so-called ggplot2. All right, this one is for plotting the figures. That's what we're gonna focus on. All right. Okay, and let me rate into the data. I think the data we already into that. All right, exactly the same data. And so let's say focus on, I think they are trying to factorize some variable here, right? Based on the, the course materials here. They try to relabel the employed and default it to characters and the word expression. Let's do this. All right, so employed defaulted. Yeah, there is not defaulted and employed and not employed. So you can see we basically re-engineering and refeature the data with different, the attributes here with a factor, right? Okay, the factor and the level usually you can think about very similar things, right? Same definition, because if you want to factorize something, they will be separate by different levels. So you can think about their similar things. All right, and Okay, so there's some interesting str is basically check the attributes of the data. For example, they will give you the the variables, attributes, what the data, the value range. Actually, you can do the similar thing here. Just to look at it here. They also give you the same results, right? Directly, you don't need to run the code here. All right, you can do this here. That's why we say this is the RStudio is kind of more like a powerful IDE, the integrated the programming, the reader friendly programming environment, because you can, it's very actively you can searching look at the data here. You don't necessarily code, you can figure. So this window is multifunctional, right? So purposely for visualizations, similar to the other software. Python will be take the very similar structures here. All right. Now let's see what kind of functions we want to warm up a little bit. We probably continue to use tidyverse functions, double pipe sign here. def data is the data sets we establish, and we want to count employ this variables, right? That we count this variable. Now remember here, we don't need to specify the data, data name, def data again, use a $sign to specify which column. You don't need to do this because you have already mentioned here, right? We use the tidyverse pipe sign basically to connect it, the raw data name and your following operations. So you don't need to mention the data name again. This computer know that you work on this data, and that you directly write down the variable name employed, and let's count them, right? So count them. Let's count. The count is basically count the numbers for each categories. All right, not employed and implied. Implies is 30-70%. And there's another interesting functions we're going to introduce here. Okay, so we can count this. Okay, now maybe I want to generate a new variables. I want to generate a new variable, so-called PRC perk, and it represents, you can say, n divided by sum n times 100. All right, you can see here. This one, what exactly means here? All right, so let's run this firstly. Now mutate, this is a new function you probably have learn here. All right, and it's easily to generate a new variable PRC. Let's see what the function it is. It generates new variable PRC here is 29.44, 70.56. This is exactly basically very simple. It's just percentage, right? You can observe, like barely observe from the number. 29.44 divided by total is 29.44%. So this is a function is simply n divided by sum n. So n is total numbers. All right, numbers. So you probably want to ask, what is n here? Do we have an n in the original data frame? We don't have this. So this n is a kind of a imaginary, or come off, you can think about like come off nowhere. All right, so this n simply represents your total sum of each categories. All right, so for example, we have a not employed, so the n here represents how many numbers in the not employed. The sum n represents the total. All right, so the computer will automatically assume that's what you're going to do. All right. Now, you probably want to say here, so we don't have any new variable. Yes, there's no new variable. This new variable is not appended to original data frame. It's not. This established will be only show here. When you run this, only show here. All right. Because computer know that this variable is only try to summarize the total percentage, right, of each group. Right, so you can't add up to original raw data. It's meaningless, right? It's just basically summarize not employed and employed what their each percentage, right? Okay, so now there's another interesting things. Sometimes this one you can think about like a one-dimensional distribution. All right, so let me mention some of the background knowledge scope here. All right, let's talk about the keywords distribution. All right, the textbook probably may or may not they covered that, right? So distribution So anybody think about what is a distribution? Distribution is basically talk about how much frequency count for each possible value, right? So let's say most likely you probably understand a normal distribution. All right, so let's take the stock returns. All right, stock returns and normal distribution will be like this. All right, it's like this. And so let's say I would say most likely stock returns in each individual day on the pack, the whole market, usually you probably get 0 returns or 0.001, very small. So this one I would like to say say if you have 1,000 days, I would like to say percentage around 0 probably can occupy say 700 days, 700. All right, so this is total counts, days. Total days. All right, so this 700 days. And now if you have a positive, like say 50% returns, that's definitely low chances, probably only have a 20 days, but it's still. And for negative, say negative 30%, you probably have against similar, let's say 15 days. All right, so that is the distribution. Now, here we just visualize the simple. We only talk about the 2 extreme cases. We don't look at the continuous. When I say continuous, that means 0%, 0.1%, negative 4%, something, any number. We only talk about the 2 situations. All right, that means, for example, I want to talk about only positive and negative returns. So if it were the case, then you can say, let's say let's talk about a histogram here. All right, so this is continuously, right? Any number can be possible, right? This is a return here. Now you can discretize that. For example, this is only. So this is discrete. That means I only consider, for example, like this column represents from negative 0.5 to positive 0.5 returns. All right, this column represents from positive 0.5 to positive 1. Right, it's kind of a range, not exactly each individual value. So you can see the range will be, the column is really thick here. All right, now let's take extreme cases. Now, I just simply want to discuss 2. One is positive return. Definitely positive can be very large, from 0 to positive 50. And I can, there's all the negative. Negative definitely could be from 0 to very negative. All right, so only 2 cases. So this one will be corresponding to our case practice right now. All right, we just talk about negative, positive, all right, default or not, and which count. Remember, we are non-default 70% against 30%. So that is kind of basically a binary distribution. All right. Okay, so now remember, this is only one-dimensional distribution because we only look into from the perspective of the negative or positive. All right, default or not, or whatever. Now, sometimes you can talk about a 2-variable distribution. That means under the employed person, how much default, how much non-default. Under the non-employed person, how much default, how much non-default. This is gonna be 2-variable distribution. All right, but again, we still take the binary, right? We separate each half on concepts, and then in the inside variable, the second level, we did split again. So basically, you can think of it as kind of a double distribution. All right. Now, for example, say, if you, let's continue to talk about the finance because of our finance, right, and the machine learning. Definitely machine learning can be applied any business area, but I just want to take the finance as the examples. All right. Now let's think about this. Let's draw a figure. All right. This is a 2-dimensional, sorry, 3-dimensional. All right. So this is stock return. Let's use the This is R. And let's talk about the firm size, company size. All right, firm size. This one is talk about the market risk. All right, the market risk. Now the market risk is a very rough estimation, right? It depends how do you rate it. It could be, you know, the monetary risk, it could be equity stock market risk, could be bond risk, but let's forget about that. So let's say there's a market risk and there's from this distribution. All right, and let's talk about the returns. Now there's a two-dimensional. So let's draw a nice figure here. I'll try my best here. How do I say? Okay, so let's that's really testing my drawing picture, you know, here. Okay, so I would like to see this is kind of a two-dimensional. All right. Now the thing is that here, for example, any points here is kind of a set of firm size and a market risk. All right, and you can see, and then corresponding to vertical lines represent how, you know, the risk. So, but usually people think about the firm size. A small size firm will be higher growth, higher riskiness. All right, and so that's why the firm size is larger, then the risk goes down. Or sometimes people think about a market risk, right? The risk is higher, and of course the return should be higher. All right, because okay, so this is a two-dimensional. So this is kind of you know, the two-dimensional distribution. So this is how much in account for each return performance. All right, it depends on the you know, the market risk or firm size. All right, so something like that. Or we can simply discrete to two types, right? So that means, for example, let's say firm size, we say big, small. All right. For the big firm size, let's say if the market risk big, market risk small. All right. So for small firm size, if a market risk is big and the market risk small, and then we can count. Now there's a fourth situation right now. All right. First, for the big company, the market is risky. What's your performance? All right. So the big company, if the market risk is small, what's your performance? So you can see we basically very roughly estimate the simplest distribution. All right, only up and down, and for two dimensionals. All right. So this is the simplify the case. All right. The figure, the 3D figure I hand draw there is continuously, right? Any value, the risk can be combination of any value there. Okay, so now let's go back to our example here. All right, now this example, you can see we basically count employed and defaulted. We use the two variables. You can, right? So the two variable dimensions, and then we count this relatively frequency, and we establish so-called perk. All right, so let's see. Now remember, this name is a new name established. You can do by your own self, no matter what the name it is, right? You can say this is Michael or whatever, you know, this whatever name, data, you know, frequency. You can name it. This PRC is named by your own self. All right, but the N here is specified, recognized by software. You can't do you can't do adders. All right, so all right, for example, if you want to change the perk to perk 1, right, perk 2, perk 3, all right, PER 3, 4, it doesn't matter. All right, it doesn't matter. All right, now let's try this. So let's look at the distribution. All right, so so this is basically a table. All right, so there is an employee, there is a defaulted, and there's this N. And we have mentioned this one is basically summarized for each category what's total counts. All right. So for example, here for not employee and not defaulted, So how many consts in this original data? 2800. All right, 2800. And how much percentage? You use this number divided by the total observations. All right. Now let's read the second line. Not employee, but defaulted. How much percentage is it? All right. And employee, but not defaulted. What the total number and how much percentage? All right. And then the next. All right. So this is basically it's kind of the two-dimensional distribution. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna give you 2 minutes to think about this. Have any questions on the run this? And I think you probably already have the code, right? Download from your computer and run this and see if you have any questions on outputs, understanding the outputs. Probably I didn't write anything here, but you can go back to textbook what their purpose of this coding. But from the results, you basically can say we want to summarize the distribution for the two dimensionals. All right, but this is a very rough estimation. Distribution is simply just count, the binary situation for each one of this. I want to count how much percentage. Now, definitely you can make this more continuous, right? Rather than the employed or unemployed, you basically summarize what the salary, right? Of course, if it is unemployment, the salary could be 0, or it could be some positive number because government subsidies, all right? But it could be some higher numbers, but that needs to get work, and in that case, the number will be continuously, or it could be any numbers, all right? And in that case, you can draw a nice big picture and a figure, all right, on the distribution of that. Or you can draw a histogram because you basically separate the salary as different bin ways, right? From $10 to $20 per hour, from 20 to 30, something like that, right? If it were the case, it would be discrete numbers range, all right? Or you can see like do this. We can do salary high, low, just two situation. But here is an employee and non-employee, all right? All right. I maybe can give you some challenge work, but it's very interesting. Sorry, it depends. For example, if I give you new data, in this new data, we will not have a non-employed or employee such a category number. We only assume every people is employee or not. All right, but I give you the numbers. I give you the salary, monthly salary. All of them are possible continuous number, right? Could be any number, decimal points. All right, so like $14.75 per hour. And I want to analyze the binary distribution. That means you need to split the salary, high salary and the low salary. All right, you want to check for high salary people, how many defaulted or not. All right, and then you probably in that time you need to specify a threshold. How do you split high or low salary? All right, and then above that is high salary. Above that high salary, lower that low salary. All right, and then for each type of categories, you want to analyze their default or not. Well, I'm pretty sure you will doable after this class. All right, but there needs some data manipulation, either by your own self to check Google a little bit or learn from the language you have learned here. All right, get at such kind of work. All right, so I think it will be very interesting. Okay, so if any questions, I'll give you 1 minute to look into that. Okay, so after a short break, like continue the next ones. So the ggplot to now that we have a summarize a little bit here, right? So let's formally go to the ggplot summary and library. Sorry, the ggplot to library here. I'm gonna use the data visualization package. So we haven't mentioned that since you have already installed the tidyverse, you don't need to specify anymore because this package is just all the functions over there. And let me introduce firstly, draw very simple pictures and to get familiar with the language there. All right. So for example, here, this one we want to visualize. Okay, let me firstly run this, right? Give you some ideas on that. All right. First thing I want to let you know that you sometimes you want the area, the window, the plot window as large as possible. All right. Let me give you some more interesting bug here, interesting problem. Okay. If you give the window, sometimes if it's a large, occupy a large part of that, it's going to be good. But sometimes if if the area is very small, they will give you some arrows. All right. Let me try. I'm not sure if it is in this case. Let me say very, very small. All right. So let's say give this a true in this case. Now let me run this. Okay, that is still good. They give you something like that. But if you run sometimes if you run some other, the plot, they will give you a warning. Okay, say there's no space, or sometimes to say forgot the memory. But anyway, so the warning message usually will be very rare, not exactly they tell you what they really want. But I want to say that in most cases, like a 60% is because your plot window is too small. All right. So in that case, you want to usually, when you plot, you have some warning messages, you want to enlarge this. All right. When you enlarge this, then it should be okay. All right. So what we're going to do here is that, let's say, try this one. All right. You can use the zoom and enlarge that. Okay. So there's many points there, right? So you can see this is the bank balance. There's bank balance here. There's different annual salary here, and two-dimensional. That give you some observations. All right, and now let's go back to, I think this figure is pretty beautiful, and let's go back to original code to say what does it really means to. All right. Okay, so firstly, you need to mention original raw data, right? Of course, it's very intuitive. You didn't mention anything, how did you know where you could plot from? And then you want to continue use the pipe sign here. All right, you work on this data. You want to use the filter. This one is not necessary. It just simply depends on what's your task. All right, this task I believe is only want annual salary larger than such numbers. All right, you only want the points. You only want the points above these salaries. All right, and now, so this first line is basically figure out what kind of data objects you want to plot. All right. If you don't specify that, that means you want to plot all the data. All right. So again, next step, you select the data, all right, and then you ggplot. Ggplot definitely is major functions you want to plot, but sometimes you want to specify what kind of anesthetic. That means what kind of picture property you want. All right. And here you want to use a plus sign. It is not a pipe again, because all of the following step, all of them belongs to drawing pictures. They are similar range functions. The only difference is that they are trying to specify further details on the picture quality. All right, so that's why they use the plus sign here. Now, this is so-called GEOM point. That means the geometry point. That means you want to make the figure some details on the scale on the points. All right. Here, AES, annual salary, bank balance. AES here means aesthetic. All right. That means what's the figure nature? What the figure nature? We understand that means what do you want to plot? Remember, we have a multiple columns there, or multiple objects. So what do you want? So you say, I only want to plot annual salary, bank balance, and you want a parenthesis to get them together. All right, so you can think about this one is your means X and the Y axis. The computer will analyze them, know them automatically. All right, and use the column sign, column sign here, and then it's the COL equals right. That means color. COL means color equals right. You want to quote it. All right, so we finished the description. So most of the words here has been pre-programmed in R. You can't change the name here. Like COL equal to, you can't change that. AES is a key function, you can't change that. Only changeable is the variable name. But also, again, so the variable name has been specified by the original data, you can't change easily, right? But anyway, so I would say AES, COL, those are names has been embedded in the R software environment. All right. So I give you a very brief explanation. If you go to online, it will be more complex, right? For the AES means describes the visual characteristic that represents the data, right? That means position, size, color, shape, transparency, feel what color it is, all of them. All right. Okay, now let's look at the data here, if this is what we want. Now, firstly, this is the red colors. You can change color here. All right, so the bank balance, there is a whatever it is one, because we only want the range with annual salaries, larger than, I think it's 300,000. All right, above that. Okay, so I want to say, can you find any trend in this case? Nothing. I think it's very intuitive. So it doesn't necessarily mean that your higher annual salary doesn't mean higher bank balance. It looks like not necessarily. All right, because we understand, higher salary people may probably put money in the other usage, right? It's more likely no relationship here. All right. Okay. Now, of course, you can, change the points to blue. Let's do it again. Let's become blue here. All right. All right. So now let's do the next step. So again, so let's do the similar plot. And now here, GEOM point is simply mean that what kind of the picture you want. You want a line, column, pie, or point. So GEOM is geometry point. That means I want to scatter the point. All right. I will give you, a few 2 or 3 examples, and then we're gonna go back to the function general definition, right? Because if I give you at the first step, tell you, examine the theory property of this function will be a little bit abstract and boring. All right. So let me give you this is the first example, second example, right? So now I continue want to all the salaries other than 300,000, and I want ggplot definitely. You want point, all right? You want a point scatter point, of course, and then now you want any static is AES. So what the objects you want to plot? Specifically, I want to plot annual salary, bank balance. I want a color equals defaulted. All right, color equal defaulted. So that is interesting. Now the question that you can see I put the color attributes, your two objects, put them all parentheses. All right, you can see put it here and use the AES. Or you can, like the last step, I can simply use AES, just the X and the Y data you want to plot, and the column as outside the bracket. You can do it's very freely. Or you can put the column all together in a bracket, all right, and name the AES. So AES is in a setting, right, to define the general property of the pictures, right? The color defaulted simply means that we let the program to decide the best color by themselves. Now, sometimes it depends. For example, if your data has, very differences or structured by layer, for example, like high, medium, low, different level for like a female or a male. So computer usually will automatically assign different color to differentiate them. All right, that's sometimes what we want. All right, let's see what happens here. As firstly, you don't necessarily delay the figure. All right, so let's examine this figure. Now this figure is automatic, and they give you a legend. All right, the legend is that not default is a red color and the blue is defaulted. So in this case, this figure is kind of like similar to our three-dimensional figure, right? Actually, we have a Z here. All right, although the Z here, we have a mapping to the two-dimensional as different colors separate. Actually, if you want to plot in the three-dimensional, that means Z axis represents the default or not. All right, and the other two-dimensional factors is means the annual salary and the bank balance. All right, now what I can say here, probably so far it's still not so easy to observe their trend here, right? Let me try my best to. So I would say, sorry, that's not good color. Let's maybe purple, right? So let's see. For this range, it's probably most likely defaulted happens. All right, defaulted happens. All right, but there's still some figure here or figure here. All right, something here that. So in this case, but sometimes even their bank balance is higher, actually sometimes maybe defaulted happens here. That's really weird. That means we need to dig more into data why that happens, right? Particularly for the credit card companies. All right, and sometimes for the bank balance is low, all right, there's no default here. All right, most likely this point is done here, right? This is and by the way, so the default or not, most likely in this they're not relevant to the annual salaries. It doesn't matter. All right, because annual salaries in this direction horizontally, right? There's not much variation in this direction. It's only in the vertical relationship directions there's big difference. Most of the default in this range. All right. Okay, so now today's class, I just want to introduce the last examples. All right, and introduce the ggplot general function. That's it. Next class, we'll continue on that. All right, so you probably want to. The histogram and density plot, I will leave for next week, but definitely you need to review by your own self, all right, the next week since the Monday, all right. So the third figure I want to introduce here, the same thing, right? The plot salary less than this range, or ggplot, I want a scatter point, and annual salary, bank balance, color default, and shape equals to employed. So that means we want to add another dimension. In this dimension, we have an employee, right? Remember, we have a salary, and the balance will be X and the Y axis. And the color has been defaulted. That's been, we have incorporates three dimensions, all right? Salary, balance, defaulted or not. And then we'll add another dimension, use different shape as employed or not. That's why it's a powerful function. Now think about it, if you have a draw figure. I think in the human space, you only can draw most likely say three-dimensional, at the most of four-dimensional figures, right? Most of the software can draw only three-dimensional, that'd be X, Y, Z, all right, in your space. Now, how to draw even higher dimensional, 4 and 5, just give you ideas, right? Assign them different culture in the color and the shape. All right, now let's do it again. See here. So the shape, you don't need to specify the shape, although you can do this, but the computer will automatically assign a different shape for different category based on the employment or not. All right, so let's do this again. All right, so and definitely this is even more complicated, right? So you can see we have a two-dimensional, we have employee, that means there is a circle and a triangle. This is too small because there's many data points there. All right. So at this stage, probably not very much meaningful. We need more, the details in the analysis. But anyways, so they give you some idea that how to, make the figure more complicated, right? And probably, I don't know, maybe we need the less data points, all right, if you want to visualize them. Okay, so I will leave the, stop it here. Let me make my own notes. Let's today. Stop here. So next class we'll continue on the histogram. All right, but I would like to take a few minutes to discuss a little bit on the ggplot. All right, ggplot.
Professor, I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I've been trying to run to follow along on the module, but I can't run a pipe on my RStudio. I already have tidyverse installed.
Do you mind if I share computer screen there, or you want to talk with me?
Give me a second. Do I have permission to share? Yeah,
yes.
I do. Okay. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. I tried following along, but every time I try running, let me just try grabbing a random. If I try running this, I can't run.
Couldn't find a function pipe sign. That means you didn't install and elaborate the tidyverse appropriately, because this.
How do I look at what I installed? Because I did install tidyverse just now. So
okay.
Do I have to restart the RStudio, do you think?
Yeah, can you please firstly restart the session? Use the Control Shift. I think F10. I forgot it. You can try this.
Okay, let me just quit it. Save so. Let me just and then let me try opening it once again.
Okay.
So I try to grab the same.
No, you need to. Can you elaborate? Go to the top of the program. The top of the program. The top.
Oh, the top.
The script. Sorry, the script. Scroll up.
Yeah, this.
Oh, yeah. Can you run the first line? The elaborate tidyverse. Just run this line. No, just the first line. Yeah. Just that's it. Let me see. ggplot conflicts. Okay, that's fine. It looks great. It looks great. So can you run this again? Or no?
Let me try this again.
You need to.
Oh, there you go.
You got it, right?
Yeah.
So say just reboot. That's it.
Oh my gosh. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
That's basically it. I was able to follow along for the most part, just watching you.
Okay, good news. Okay, good news. So so I think that's why this, as I mentioned, the package is a very important thing. You want to do it, to make sure it runs great. So let's look at the ggplot, and let me go back to. So this is a ggplot, okay? So this is probably the largest, the packages, particularly for some people asking, either interview or either friends or whatever, what you learn in RStudio most, you probably want the data visualization, you're the boss like that. And the ggplot, is things that it's similar to Excel actually, the Excel, and although Excel, you're really manually to adjust the parameters, but here is just using program. And the ggplot, there's many things like cheat sheet. That means I summarize the key functions. There is a tutorial. And even Python uses the ggplot function. Actually, you can do this. Although I didn't introduce this class, some of the software they share the same packages. All right, and ggplot download, you probably don't need to do that because you already have a tidyverse, which is developed by recent years. They already included this packages. And GitHub, that means the GitHub is, we have mentioned the previous class before. Probably this is a big code sharing the website, and actually a lot of people establish a website there. And for example, if you want to work for the Google or Apple or Amazon, I think the best thing for experienced job employee that they will look into, do you have a GitHub, the personal file, the website, and have you done any project and upload the code there? All right, there's several followers there. That definitely a big signal there. I just want to talk about computer science and specialize there. So usually this GitHub has a lot of computers code there. So GitHub, you can find the raw resource code of ggplot. We understand ggplot is a package, all right, same as any other package. The package by itself is written by a code, right? This code usually written on the C++, even higher level, this software. So the raw code will be there. That means the code is free, all right? You can generate an, for example, if you want to get some startup, all right, you think the ggplot is really bad. Suppose you think this consumer needs some other functions, then you can write some code based on the ggplot raw code, all right, and change it somewhere, and then you can package a new small software and put an app in somewhere, or I connect to different the USB or whatever, right? So you can do something like that. So this is raw codes. They are similar, like Tesla, for example. The Tesla is a big electronic cars, all right. And after Tesla, we understand there's many very good electronic cars around the world right now, including China, including Sweden, the South Korea. The benefits is, right? The Tesla basically the upload, the source code of the energy sharing, the centralized system code onto the GitHub. I think the GitHub probably somewhere. There's millions of lines there, and then the people can use that because this is the core assets, all right? So the batteries management system code. So use that to control, then people learn that, and of course there's some more secretary they were not shared there, all right, and then it can facilitate the different company, the EV cars, their company there, right? So this is a big website there. You can find many of them, but sometimes you can, for example, like Microsoft Excel. We know this is commercial software. You can definitely find the source code for Excel in a GitHub, right? It cannot be publishable. And by the way, this software is very complex. You can imagine Excel. I think there's millions of lines in the code for the Excel because they're so complicated. And ggplot RStudio, definitely. Yeah, there's RStudio is one of the most important function there, right? Histogram. Sorry, I'm not a big fan of that. So now there's a more interesting here. Google will give you a DPIYR. DPIYR is a very powerful packages for data manipulation. Actually, we probably have already used some of them. You probably didn't realize because I think the DPYLYR, this packages has been packaged into tidyverse we just installed. The tidyverse is very powerful, all right? It already includes a lot of packages. I think DPYLYR is one of them. This one is particularly to manipulate the data frame. We will learn in the future, all right? And you probably have say ggplot. Why? But there's a 2 here. The 2 simply means the newest version. Nowadays, people usually the ggplot 2. You don't need care about the old version ggplot. All right, so don't need to, because tidyverse already include that. Now, firstly, if you want to look into the tutorial here, many of them. All right, many of them. So I like to say you can select any of them, for beginners, or particularly, for like dummy, right? Something like that to learn this. But I love to say, if you just look at the code itself, it's meaningless, it's boring. You want to do some project like our class, right? With some mini project that will give you examples. All right, but let's go back to the general definition of ggplot here. And this software rproject.org.cran. This one is a PDF files, usually 100 pages. You don't need to care about. This is the explanation of the raw code by the contributors. The contributors are for free. All right, they develop this code, and usually there's author there, right? For the license MIT, that's probably this software is written by some MIT guys, and it's a free. But there's still some license, right? That means you probably cannot use this for commercial, earn a lot of big money. You probably can contribute, mention them, all right? Some copyright, but for teaching, it's definitely okay. And I want to say here, our documents, you probably want to see it here. This one is usually for the general introduction of this. And ggplot2, I think the last class we have mentioned that, or previously probably the welcome. This one is, I think, very good book. This is a free book. I think we mentioned when I searched that. Yeah, see, this is very, and it's free. This is by Sprinkler. All right, I think the similar with my this book. All right, the introduction to the machine learning, statistical learning. All right, so here and there's same publisher or Sprinkler, and all of the book are free. All right, you can go to online, but if you want a hard copy, you want to buy them. This one is also online. It's a very good resources. I just mentioned that, right? Just go there and they will introduce a lot of things. And there's not many pages, right? Can we download the PDF? Let me see. Yeah, they probably cannot allow you to download the PDF. That's fine, but you can see them section by section, right? If you have a patience, all right, and all right, and our documentation here, this website usually will be most general introduction. For example, like here, ggplot is the name of these functions, and it's a system for this define what it's about. The grammar of a graphics. We probably don't need to look into that. This is more details, a collection of all the orders of the graphs. You will just need to learn for your own projects what they need. All right, and installation, they mentioned that you can install the package Tidyverse, or alternatively you can install the package ggplot2. But remember here, if you only install the package ggplot2, you probably need to install the other software other packages, because when you analyze data, you need other like a TDIYR we discussed, right? Which you need to also install separately. But the Tidyverse is good because it has included all the necessary packages all in one. All right. Because you can't use only plot, because sometimes you need to plot after you're cleaning or manipulate the data, right? But in the manipulated data, you need some functions there. All right, and okay, so this is to give you general pictures. All right, ggplot, MPG, AES, display, HWY, color, geom products. So what exactly means here? Right, let me explain here. So ggplot2, your first library call this MPG. Usually, this MPG you don't care. This is a specific data name in the RStudio, the built-in MPG. The example is I think I remember there's a dealer's second-hand cars mileage. I remember per gallon. I think this is a specific data. RStudio has their own many specific data for beginners, right? There, for example, in the next semester, if you learn select my NLP class, and we're looking into AI and the linguistic, and we will probably touch a lot about the very famous writer's book in like Charles Dickens, novelties. We'll learn the Mark Twain's, the novelties, and we will use the AI technology to analyze, the author's thoughts and ideas, based on the book after analyze the big data in the book. All right. So all the book has been digitalized in the R, the R software here. AES, we have established that, right? It's the major function, how to define what the objects you want to plot. All right. And the HWY, I think we didn't use that. This one is trying to define what's a line width, right? For example, if your points in your line, you want a thicker, you want lighter, you only control that. And the color, we have seen that, right? You only use the COL equals to whatever you want. And the plus sign represents what type of the plot you want. All right. So this is the this is a point, sometimes it's lines, it's up to you. So this is very, very, very basic structure. Actually, it could be enriched hundreds of lines, depends on what different figures you want. All right. Okay, so I think that's it. Even here they didn't introduce much, because we understand this function is so rich, and the different projects has different grammar here. So they generally list out very simplified version of that. That's fine. So I suggest you go back to today's video. All right, when you go home and look at what I discussed today. Definitely we were just only talk about the smallest of things here. And if you have a time, go to the online book, the free book. I think I didn't list it in the syllabus. I just defined that, right? It's a ggplot book. I think I need to add this in the next semesters, in the future, for the syllabus, updated that. A very good book, and it's a thick book, right? 200 pages, and just if you have time, just go through that and give a better understanding. All right, because in the class we only can talk about a project specific, plot functions, but in the real world, you probably tackle with different data, right? Business, supermarket, finance, right? Okay, so that's it for today's, and I expect I'll give you the homework 2 assignment next week, but I will definitely give a good time to make announcement that and severely give you 10 days to finish. All right, I will let you know. All right, that's for today's class, and if you have any questions, you can discuss right now. If you have no questions, you can leave the Zoom. Thank you. You too. Thank you.
Professor, whenever you're ready. It's just gonna be.
Sure. I suppose you come to school, so.
Oh no, I actually woke up a little late, so I couldn't make it to campus, and you were my only. I thought I'd just stay home.
Yeah, okay, no problem. I just saw it because sometimes school is, it's good. I have talked to school. It's university say if it's an online course, can you change to face to face much better? Particularly for such a
Oh
high
yeah,
tech course.
It'd be great if you were in person, actually.
Yeah, no, the thing that because we are, we are have different things every day. It's really hard to, to recognize us in the same time. So, we have to reconcile the video. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Just let me ask you what kind of question you have. Yeah.
As a finance major, I didn't really know what I wanted to get into, but then learning about art and art studio, I think the direction I want to get into is fin and that industry. So I just want to know like what skills, what languages do I need to make an impact in the industry?
Yeah. The first thing, you better want to understand theory. So your finance, you understand investment, you understand corporate finance, those things. That's the best to be, right? And the other important thing, you want to understand statistics. That's probably the most important thing. All right. Particularly if you want to do some, we have a lot of alumni there. All right. So talk with them. We have actually a lot of students working for example, I give you some job title there. You can do some data analysis. You can do revenue analysis, the price analysis, and you can do some entry level data science. That's probably the cool name, right? So data science, one of the career paths will be more exciting, and or data engineering. All right. So and you want to do some kind of job, so they probably definitely want to finance and statistics and software. All right. And I'd like to say for undergraduate, all right, even for the master students, they don't expect you to really good expert in the Python, some of which are high level, but I think since you have already learned R, you better want to at least a semi-expert in this field through the project. All right, through the project. You can get some coursework certificates. I strongly recommend you. Some of my friends, I usually talk with them, but it depends. If you have no experience, zero experiences on projects, I think you can take some coursework. All right, so get some certificates, very easy, just a couple of weeks and very cheap. And but sometimes the coursework, certificates, the problem is that HR probably want to hear about your hands-on experiences. And those coursework projects, you want to learn them, particularly they have some, not only quiz, okay, but you want some like a, capsule on some smart mini project after each certificates. You want to learn that, all right? And in your course, definitely will give some mini projects to analyze, some data. And you want to remember then the project name, talk with the HR or some other people you want interested in, talk with you on that case, all right? And then learn some packages, right? Mention the packages specifically expertise in. And you better want to, learn some Excel. All right, Excel. We have a certificate testing.
Right? Excel VBA.
Yeah, right. You mean the Python? No. So
no, you can. Are you familiar with? It's like writing.
Sorry, the internet is a little bit bad.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me better?
Yeah. In the Excel, yeah, I'm definitely familiar with that. You mean we have a certificates test here, all right, and you can do the associate and the expert, and you can test that. We have trading floor can test and make a point with Peter, and the thing is that previously in my class I have students, very good students. So they take the 2 certificates, go to JP Morgan, go to London and New York City, and I think it's very good, very good, and you better want to take the expert. You're truly, because you can see yourself is certified something, and Excel, because Excel has a lot of very good data visualization analytic ability there, and I think this has been make you very outstanding. Learn some R software on software and learn some of the Excel. Well, if time allows, do some preliminary work on SQL. The SQL, the reason is that, the SQL, that means nowadays a lot of big companies, hospitals, their data, the central database management system in SQL. All right. You probably use some Excel or R or Python software to analyze data, but the data will come from the database called SQL. You need to use your computer software to visit that database. Do you understand? So that means that you need a query. We call it query data. So that means you learn some SQL knowledge. All right. Of course, they didn't expect you to expert because they learn so much things, right? So that's one thing that you want to make your resume beautiful. You just get some little bit touch on that. But you want some expertise, like say Excel and R Studio, like here. All right. And the beyond that, I don't recommend too much. Know something about Python. Don't expertise, because you want expertise in something rather than just touch a little bit everything, right? So yeah. So you know what? Actually, last year I wanted to open a course on the medical side because we have a healthcare is a big employer here. I want to teach a course on how to use SQL for the healthcare industries data, but I think we don't have a chance. The students are really busy. But I'm interested in the teaching SQL in the healthcare. All right. So that's the things, right? For myself, for example, because my most like the research is totally different thing. All right. I don't use those software. Those software is to manipulate the data, right? For master students, in your firms, I usually use the MATLAB, which is another software to change, modify the machine learning algorithm, right? It's more like mathematical stuff. It's really boring, and I don't think it's relevant to industry, right? For industry, just to learn how to use the data visualization. You know what? Our school also have very good resources like the Tabula. This Tabula is kind of data visualization, particularly if you want to apply for job, like say business analytics, data engineering. They usually require some tabular visualization. But I think again, so there's many things, right? So just focus on what you like, right? So like we have learn R, we have learn Excel, specialize, certify that, and touch a little bit, know something about this, and spend 1 or 2 weeks, get some certificates, 2 or 3 weeks. That's more than enough.
Okay, all right. But our studio is heavily used in finance, in the fintech field.
I don't think in the heavily used. If you really heavily used, I think let's say it depends. Like a big banks, you already use the SAS. The reason again, so the reason SQL, the reason is that the data has been because of historical reason. The bank has been 200 years. So the data has been since 1950s. The data has been stored originally in the SAS or SQL because they're old aged. All right, they can't easily change all the data to the R version. It's hard. So and some banks use the Python. It really depends. But what I'm saying that you want to show them your algorithm ability, your statistical ability. That's most important thing. You can't say I don't understand any normal distribution or regression, or something we will mention later on. No, that's nonsense. They will talk about the bigger the company, the better the company. They will focus on the theory much better. So they will answer questions of statistical financial stuff, and then talk about the software you'll learn. I think this is a quick learning. Software is I don't worry about that. Just practice several projects. That's it. Learn some crossword certificates. Spend some couple weeks.
Okay. All right. That sounds good.
Yeah, no problem. We're still going on. We just opened a 1 month club. We will learn more. Don't worry about that. Yeah.
Okay. So going back on your when you mentioned SQL, SQL has a lot of different I guess avenues. What do you suggest I would focus on?
You can use the MySQL. But yeah, it's well, you also can select some. I remember. Let me go back. I think SQL has some certificates. I have no time to run this. But the young kids can do that. Let me see. MySQL.
Do we have a club for programming languages? Do you know?
We don't have a club. It probably should be not so many people in this field. Some people don't like this, right? So don't go to those universities. Those are that's totally useless, and they're also very expensive. Let me see. Go to company. Yeah, here I think I searched them before, and I think it's very useful here because let me go say you don't want to be developer or administrator. Let me see developers. And I remember there is. Or sorry. I think SQL has 3 levels. The first level is a specialist, and the other is a higher expert. And a specialist certificate is no expiration, all lifelong. But for higher level, they only have a 2 to 3 years, life expectancy. I didn't see any here. So just you want to take the easiest certificates, all right? And I think it should be, just spend several couple of weeks. It should be passed easy, and show okay you know something about SQL. The reason you want to know SQL, you want to really broaden your career path, right? Not only in finance but in business. Car dealers, healthcare, hospitals. The banking. Supermarket like Walmart. They definitely like that.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah.
I think I've gotten a lot. So I got, like understand finance, understand statistics, yeah, RStudio, Python, work on my certifications. I definitely will look into my SQL certification.
There are a lot of things you want. Yeah, you want.
Yeah.
You want. Yeah.
Maybe next time if you could help me break down what certifications I can get.
Yeah. So actually, let me tell you, the if you really want to say this so separate that piece by piece, let me tell you, one certificate can integrate every necessary here. You can take the Google. I think that's very easy. There's two levels. One is entry level, the other is a higher level.
Oh, okay. I've seen this. I've seen this.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah. There's certificates. I have to check that. I think the Google used the R as a medium to teach you skills. So this certificate is easy. This is a easy level and hard level, right? If you pass two of them, fantastic. Okay. So yeah. So because they are very close to us. They introduce data science. They introduce the how to the manipulate data, the visualization, all of them in the RStudio in an environment. It's good. IBM also certificates. But IBM use the Python. All right. And I think Amazon has the Azure, their cloud certificates, but I don't recommend you do this. But I think I have a research that this one is a pretty good for friendly for the undergraduate students.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they include everything. Like they introduce R, they introduce Excel, everything. I think there's like 4 or 5 months course, and there's a couple of them 7 courses, and after a lot they give us certificates, and this is certified by Google, typically. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, I've a lot already from just a few minutes of talking to you. Okay, I wrote down a whole notes.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can discuss next week. Next week, you don't need to absorb everything today. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that sounds good. Thank you, Professor. Thank you for
No
taking the
problem.
time.
Bye.
All right, have a good one.
Okay. Okay, Jonathan, you have a questions? Okay, so I'm gonna leave right now.